بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. Today we'll talk a little bit about something that we were talking about 2-3 days ago, and that is the miraculous nature of the Quran. And the reason why this topic has come up again is because the surah that we recited today, it referenced the same thing over again. The surah begins with Alif Lam Ra, and we all know that there are around 25 surahs in the Quran that begin with what are called the Huruf al-Muqatta'at, or the, if you like, the broken letters. Huruf al-Muqatta'at, these are Alif Lam Mim, Noon, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad, Yasin, Taha, Alif Lam Mim. These are the Alif Lam Mim, Sad, Alif Lam Mim, Ra. These are the Huruf al-Muqatta'at. And scholars have differed about what they mean since the very beginning of time. Since the time of the Tabi'un, they have been discussing what are these letters at the beginning of the words. There are many opinions. One of them is that it is used to draw attention, that the Arabs would use these letters to draw attention, that when you hear these letters, immediately the mind pays attention to what is going to happen, because these are strange letters. They don't actually have a linguistic meaning. There are many other opinions. There's over 10 opinions. One of the opinions is that these letters seek to draw attention to the miraculous nature of the Quran, that the Quran is a miracle. How so? By drawing attention to the fact that these letters are the same letters that we use in our Arabic language, those who speak Arabic. And yet Allah is composing with these letters what mankind cannot compose. And if you look at the Huruf al-Muqatta'at, they are exactly 14 in number. 14 letters. And the Arabic alphabet is composed of 28 letters. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses exactly half of the alphabet in the beginnings of these surahs. If you look at all of these letters and put them all together, Alif, Lam, Mim, Yasin, Taha, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad, all of these different letters that you add together, you actually get exactly 14. That's half of the alphabet. And then there's a deeper level that we're not going to go to, which our Shaykh can explain better, and that is if you look at where the letters come from, Makharij al-Huruf, these 14 represent all of the Makharij evenly, half as well. Those that come from the throat, those that come from the nose, those come from the middle of the tongue, the tip of the tongue, the beginning of the tongue. So it is as if Allah took a selection, 50%, of the letters that we use in daily language. And then Allah is saying, look, these are your letters, and this is my speech. Now you produce a speech similar to my speech, if you're able to do that. And in this surah, Allah says the exact same thing, that فَأْتُوا بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ مِثْلِهِ مُفْتَرَيَاتٍ. Bring 10 full surahs if you're in doubt about this Quran. And if you notice, very interesting here, brothers and sisters, every time Allah mentions one of these letters, Alif Lam Mim, Alif Lam Mim Sad, Alif Lam Mim Ra, Ha Mim, Ha Mim Ain Sin Qaf, every single time, the next letter, not the next letter, excuse me, the next verse is always about what? The Quran. Always, without any exception. The very next sentence is always something about the Quran. Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. حَامِيم وَالْكِتَابِ الْمُبِينِ. يَاسِين وَالْقُرْآنِ الْحَكِيمِ. طَهَا مَا أَنزَلْنَا عَلَيْكَ الْقُرْآنَ لِتَشْقَى. Right? Every single time Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions these letters, the very next ayah is always about the beauty of the Quran, the perfection of the Quran, and so on and so forth. And therefore, Allah knows best, but it seems that the strongest interpretation is that these letters are meant to indicate what is called in Arabic i'jaz al-Quran, or the miraculous nature of the Quran, that the Quran is unique. And there are 5 verses in the Quran, we referenced some of them in our last 2 days ago. There are 5 verses in the Quran where Allah issues a challenge. 5 verses. And if you look at them, there's yet another miracle in these 5 verses. Why? The very first verse that came down, Allah challenged them to produce the whole Quran. فَلْيَأْتُ بِحَدِيثٍ مِثْلِهِ إِنْ كَانُوا صَادِقِينَ. Bring the whole Quran. The next verse that came down is the one that our Shaykh recited in Taraweeh. That from the whole Quran, Allah brought it down to what? فَلْيَأْتُوا بِعَشْرِ سُوَرٍ مِثْلِهِ مُفْتَرَيَاتٍ. Allah brought it down from the whole to 10. Then the next verse, Allah Azza wa Jal brought it down to even lower, and that is 1 surah. Right? And then the final verse, which is the only verse of these 5 revealed in Medina, And that is the verse that we all know in Baqarah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the challenge again, and He sealed the challenge. And that is, فَإِن كُنْتُمْ فِي رَيْبٍ مِّمَّا نَزَّلْنَا عَلَىٰ عَبْدِنَا فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ وَادْعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ الصَّادِقِينَ. So this is the same one surah. Then Allah seals the challenge. فَإِن لَمْ تَفْعَلُوا وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا. This is the sealing of the challenge. That if you cannot do it, and you will never be able to do it. وَلَن تَفْعَلُوا. And this shows us that even in the challenges there is a graduality. And this is, subhanAllah, so powerful. Imagine the Arabs are taunted, bring the whole Quran. And they're thinking about it, not possible. Then Allah lowers the challenge. Okay, fine, bring 10 surahs. They still can't do it. Then Allah lowers it again. Okay, fine, bring 1 surah. They still can't do it. And then Allah seals it, that bring 1 surah, if you're able to, call anybody else you want. You see, when Allah issued the 10, He didn't say call anybody else. It's as if everyone has to be individual working, right? In the final, Allah opens the door for any help other than Allah. It is as if Allah is saying that all the men and all the jinn and all of the creation, let them try to produce 1 surah similar to the Quran, and then Allah Himself responds, you will never be able to do this. And this shows us that the Quran is indeed the greatest miracle. I quoted a hadith 2 halaqas ago, but I didn't finish it. The Prophet ﷺ said, every single prophet has been given miracles because of which his people believed in him. Right? And I mentioned some examples of Musa and Isa and Salih and whatnot. I didn't finish the hadith. The hadith goes on. The hadith is in Bukhari. Every single prophet has been given miracles because of which his people believe in him. Then he said, and the only miracle that I have been given, the only miracle that I have been given is this wahi that Allah has revealed to me. This is my only miracle. Therefore, he said, فَأَرْجُوا أَنْ أَكُونَ أَكْثَرُهُمْ تَابِعًا يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. I hope that I have the maximum number of followers on the Day of Judgment because of this miracle. Now this shows us many things, this one hadith. Firstly, we already talked about that every prophet has been given miracles. A sign of being a prophet is miracles. Secondly, that every miracle has been according to the culture of the people of its time. We mentioned this as well. Thirdly, that the Prophet ﷺ said, this is my only miracle. In Arabic, وَإِنَّمَا, and إِنَّمَا is harfu takhsis, is exclusivity. The only miracle I have ever been given. But let me ask you, is this his only miracle? No. He was given many. Yet he referred to it as the only. And this shows us that the miracle of the Quran is so powerful that it eclipses all of the other miracles. It's as if the other miracles don't really count. They're trivial compared to the miracle of the Quran. Now when you look at the other miracles, they're pretty big miracles from our standpoint, right? There are rocks that are saying Subhanallah, and the Sahaba are hearing this. That there's a tree that the Prophet wanted to use. He literally held the tree and dragged it across the desert, and the tree is following him from the roots. The tree is following him and then plants itself back. That the Prophet is speaking to a camel in front of the Sahaba, and he's saying, the camel has told me that its owner is beating him and treating him harshly. Where is the owner? Don't beat your camel. The camel is talking to him, right? That the rains are coming, the cloud that the Prophet points to the sky, and the clouds come out of nowhere and it begins to rain, and then he points again, it stops to rain. There are hundreds of miracles, and yet the Prophet is saying there's really only one miracle. That is the miracle. And this shows us that the miracle of the Quran eclipses all other miracles. Everything else is secondary. Now this also shows us that the Prophet concluded the hadith by saying, therefore I wish to have the maximum number of followers on the Day of Judgment. What does that show us about the miracle of the Quran compared to the other prophets' miracles? In other words, why is he saying, I want to have the maximum followers? Because his miracle is the most powerful. His miracle will give the biggest converts. That's what he's saying. That my miracle should technically qualify for the largest converts, the most converts. So why is the Quran such a powerful miracle? Basically what the Prophet is saying is that this miracle is far greater than Jesus' miracles and of course we respect all the prophets. When we mention the other prophets, we're not, a'udhu billah, astaghfirullah, intending to denigrate, but we're being factual here, that tilka rusulu faddalna ba'dahum ala ba'd. Allah chose some over others. This is what Allah Azza wa Jalla tells us. We respect all of them. But nonetheless, we have to point out that the Prophet is saying, my miracle should gain more followers than even the miracles of resurrecting the dead, healing the leper, of parting the Red Sea in front of millions of people. The Red Sea just stops, parts. But the Quran eclipses all of that. Because I want to have the largest number of followers because of the Quran. Why is the miracle of the Quran so powerful? And again, this is, inshallah, maybe in the future we'll talk even more about this. In today's khatir, I just want to mention two major points. Two major points, and maybe in a future khatara we'll give specific points, but there are two broad points. The first reason why the miracle of the Quran is more powerful than any other miracle is that the other miracles of the prophets before our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they were meant to, what was the purpose of the miracle? Like, why is Jesus healing the blind? You tell me. What's the purpose?
That's what they were famous for.
But what is the purpose of a miracle? To show people that he's a prophet, right? You understand? To show people he's a prophet. The purpose of a miracle is to prove that my message is from God. Correct? So, Moses sends 9 signs. Allah says, tis'a ayat. One of them being the staff, the other being the hand, the other being the splitting. All of these are tis'a ayat. And the purpose is to show that Allah sent the Torah to Musa. Isa gave so many miracles. The purpose is to show Allah gave the Injil to Isa. We notice all of the miracles prove the message. Correct? You following me? Right? Now, what is different about the Quran? Ibn Taymiyyah comments that the power of the mu'jiza of the Quran, the power of the miracle of the Quran, is that the Quran itself becomes the miracle and the message. So the message is the miracle, and the miracle is the message combined in one. The Quran doesn't need external miracles to prove it. You see the point here? Every other miracle, it needed to be propped up by every other risala basically, needed to be proven by the miracles. Right? The Quran did not need external proof. The Quran is the hujjah and the risala together in one. It is the mu'jiza and the bayan together in one. And so it's not in need of anything external to support its own claim to be from God. You see, this is what? That's one very powerful point. And the second general point, and that will be our khatira for today, the second broad point is that the Quran is absolutely unique compared to all the other miracles of the prophets for one simple reason. And that is that, we would say in modern physics, the time-space factor has been removed from it. So for example, let's just think about the miracles of Jesus. Do we believe that Jesus cured the leper and healed the sick? Do we believe this? Yes. Did we see it? No. How do we believe it? Because we're told to believe it. This is circular. This is circular, right? I believe Isa ibn Maryam, by the permission of Allah, said to the dead, come forth, and he walked out of the grave. I believe this. Just like I believe that there's going to be a sunrise tomorrow. I have yaqeen that this happened. Somebody asked me, how do you know? I said, because my book told me. Do I believe the Red Sea was literally parted in half? I believe this. I believe this. Just like I believe it is dark outside, wallahi, I believe firmly that Allah parted the Red Sea. Somebody says, how do you know? I say, my book told me. How do you know the book is true? Well, the book told me, right? It's circular. Now, how do we know that our Prophet ﷺ is a prophet? These miracles that happened, the splitting of the moon, all of this, did any of us see it? No. So with the Quran, what happens is, it doesn't matter which century you're living in, which geographic location you're living in. It doesn't matter if you're in Timbuktu or Samarkand. It doesn't matter if you're in 7th century Arabia listening to the Quran from the Prophet ﷺ, or you're in the 21st century in Alaska. The Quran can be felt, it can be heard, it can be touched, it can be recited, it can be studied. Anybody has doubt here, read the book. Read the Quran. You don't believe in the message? Here, Allah challenges you. Bring something similar to this. And we all know that the Quran, the power that it has, we referenced this 2 days ago, the power that it has over its listeners. And there's no question that when you translate it, the meanings really are honestly destroyed. The beauty is almost completely gone. But even in translation, there is that glimmer still there. No doubt the Arabic is the kalam, the translation is not the kalam. But still that glimmer remains. I remember one convert that I met, subhanAllah, his story was just so simple, that he's searching for religions. He opens up the Quran, the first page, and he says, the first page of the Quran, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And he says to me, that as soon as I read this ayah, I said to myself, this is how a book from God should begin. The book should begin, Alhamdulillah, praise be to God, the Lord of the worlds. Right? And I kept on reading, and then I got to Alif Lam Mim, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. And he said, this book must be from God. What? You just got one page, the second line on the second page. How? He goes, no, he was an author. Nobody writes a book except that the first person to double guess the book is the author himself. Right? No, and anybody who's written an article, who has written a term paper, who has written any book knows this. Anybody who has written anything knows this. That the person who doubts his own work the most is always the author. Man, I didn't do a good job, I messed this out, I should have done this. This is human nature. And so when he read that the first line of Baqarah, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ, there's no doubts, there's nothing wrong in it. It's the perfect book. Because nobody could say this other than God himself. Simple, like this is the fitrah speaking up, right? And we can go on and on. The point being that the Quran is, we call it in Arabic, al-mu'jizatul khalida, the eternal miracle. That you don't need to be in Arabia in 7th century. You don't need to even understand Arabic, to be honest. Because we already mentioned, non-Arabs, when they hear the Quran, they sense something. They feel something that is unique about it. And that is why the Quran is the most powerful miracle. Why? In this khatira we'll mention 2 broad reasons. Inshallah in future khatiras we'll mention at least 10 specific reasons as well. The 2 broad reasons, memorize them. Number 1, because the Quran is the miracle and the message, and the message and the miracle combined. It doesn't need external miracles to prove its own message. And number 2, because the Quran removes time and space impediments. That no matter where you are, no matter which area, which geographic region, which era, you read the Quran and you can feel the miracle yourself. And we can go on and on, but one final point, brothers and sisters. Many of us, we live in a society where our religion is bombarded, where questions are asked we cannot answer, where sometimes, and let us be honest with ourselves, even we begin to get doubts. Even we like, is my religion really true? How do I answer that question? I don't know. And brothers and sisters, I'll be frank with you. In the world that I inhabit, in these ivory towers of academia, wallahi, some of the questions that they ask and what they bring, it is very difficult to respond. And I've also had my moments of crises that how do I say this? And I always at those times go back to the Quran. Always just read this book. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put within this book something that brings peace to the heart. And every time I read this book, my yaqeen is reaffirmed. My iman is settled down. Because I know that no speech can move me. No speech can bring me the comfort, the feelings, the emotions that this speech can bring. Simply listening to the Quran, reciting the Quran, I know that my religion is true. My Lord has spoken the truth, and His kalam is indeed His kalam. Therefore, brothers and sisters, anytime you feel any doubt, you feel your iman go down, you will come across a situation, a quote, somebody comes and says something, really shakes you up. First thing you should do is start reciting this Quran. Because Allah has told us that nothing increases our iman like reciting this book, because this book is nothing other than His kalam. So when us created beings read the speech of the Creator, we feel a peace and a serenity that nothing on earth will ever bring us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of the true believers of the Quran. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.